The Supreme Court has stepped into a national crisis, taking on a case that will impact millions of Americans who rely on food assistance to survive. In a dramatic move, the court halted a lower court's order to restore SNAP benefits for millions, leaving families in limbo as they wait for a final decision. This isn't just a legal battle, it's a fight over whether families will have enough to eat and whether children will go to bed hungry or nourished. SNAP, the backbone of America's nutritional safety net, was thrown into chaos during a 38-day government shutdown, disrupting the lives of those who depend on it most. The Trump administration's unprecedented suspension of benefits ignited a fierce legal fight, now playing out at the highest court in the land, with both sides digging in. For 42 million people, the court's intervention means anxiety and uncertainty about their next meal, and a daily struggle to make ends meet. The administration claims it's defending the separation of powers, arguing that only Congress can decide how these programs operate. Meanwhile, critics see it as politicizing hunger, accusing leaders of using food as a bargaining chip in political battles. The outcome will set a precedent for how the government treats its most vulnerable in times of crisis, shaping future responses to emergencies. This is about more than legal jargon. It's about the real lives of families across the country, and the values we choose to uphold as a nation. As the legal clock ticks, the fate of SNAP hangs in the balance, symbolizing a nation at a crossroads, where the decision will echo far beyond the courtroom, into kitchens and communities everywhere. On November 8, 2025, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson issued a temporary administrative stay, a move that immediately drew national attention and sparked debate about the future of food assistance in America. This stay paused a lower court's order that would have forced the Trump administration to release nearly $9 billion in SNAP benefits, a sum that could have provided critical support to millions of low-income families across the country. Importantly, this stay wasn't a final decision on the merits of the case. Instead, it froze the lower court's order in place, prolonging uncertainty for millions of Americans who rely on SNAP to put food on the table. The administration argued that releasing the funds immediately could cause administrative chaos and confusion, while the stay allowed time for a more careful legal review and consideration of the broader implications. For families waiting on these benefits, it meant another agonizing delay, more empty cupboards, and the stress of not knowing when or if help would arrive. The stay maintained the suspension of benefits, dashing hopes for quick relief and leaving many to wonder how much longer they would have to wait. It set up a dramatic countdown, with the administration soon returning to the Supreme Court to request a longer pause, raising the stakes for everyone involved. An administrative stay is a neutral, procedural move designed to prevent confusion or disruption if a lower court's order is later overturned, but it can feel anything but neutral to those affected. Every delay in the legal process has a real-world cost, especially when it comes to food security and the well-being of children and families. For 42 million Americans, the legal back and forth felt like yet another setback in their ongoing fight for basic necessities, highlighting just how high the stakes are when justice and survival intersect. The crisis began with a 38-day government shutdown, the longest in U.S. history, grinding federal operations to a halt and leaving millions of Americans uncertain about their future. For the first time ever, SNAP's funding was severed, putting the nation's largest food assistance program in jeopardy and leaving families to wonder how they would put food on the table. The USDA announced it couldn't issue November's $9 billion in benefits without new congressional funding, sparking panic in low-income communities and sending shockwaves through households that rely on SNAP to survive. SNAP isn't just a line item, it's a lifeline for 1 in 8 Americans, helping them afford groceries and providing stability in times of hardship. The sudden suspension left families facing empty fridges just before Thanksgiving, a time when many already struggle to make ends meet and the need for support is greatest. President Trump tied SNAP's restoration to ending the shutdown, a move critics called political leverage, as negotiations dragged on and uncertainty deepened for those in need. Judge McConnell accused the administration of withholding funds for political reasons, turning a funding issue into a debate about using the vulnerable as bargaining chips and raising questions about the ethics of such tactics. The shutdown's impact rippled through the economy. Grocers lost revenue, food banks were overwhelmed by new demand, and families made impossible choices between paying bills and buying food. The halt didn't just pause a program, it destabilized an entire support system, leaving service providers scrambling and communities on edge. Millions were left with nowhere to turn, exposing the fragility of America's safety net and the deep reliance so many have on these essential benefits. The shutdown revealed how quickly political standoffs can threaten basic needs, turning policy disputes into real-life crises for ordinary people. For many, it was a stark reminder of how close hunger can be, and how easily the safety net can unravel when politics come before people. At the heart of the legal fight is a clash over separation of powers. The Trump administration argued that only Congress can appropriate funds, and a judge can't force the executive to spend money not approved by lawmakers. They warned that using a separate child nutrition fund for SNAP would set a dangerous precedent and threaten other vital programs. The administration framed the issue as defending constitutional order, not just feeding people. SNAP advocates countered that the administration was choosing not to use available resources, manufacturing a crisis for political leverage. Judge McConnell rebuked the administration, saying the government had a duty to prevent hunger when it had the means. Plaintiffs argued the court was simply ordering the executive to use tools Congress had already provided. This fundamental clash propelled the case to the Supreme Court, testing the limits of executive authority and judicial oversight. As Washington stalled, at least 9 states, including California, New York, and Wisconsin, stepped in, using their own funds to issue November SNAP benefits. This was a risky, costly move, but it kept families fed while the federal government was paralyzed. States' actions created a patchwork safety net, exposing disparities. Some residents got help, others didn't, depending on where they lived. Food pantries and charities were overwhelmed, unable to meet the sudden surge in need. Families skipped meals, watered down milk, and faced impossible choices between food and rent. The state's emergency measures were unsustainable, highlighting the indispensable role of federal support. Their actions showed a moral commitment to prevent hunger, but also revealed the limits of state intervention. The crisis underscored that only a stable federal system can ensure no one falls through the cracks. Amid the chaos, Warren Buffett offered a voice of reason, emphasizing the need for reliability and compassion in government aid. "A great country doesn't play games with people's dinner plates," he said, reminding us that the social safety net is a promise, not a bargaining chip. Buffett argued that predictability in programs like SNAP is as vital as stability in financial markets. His words resonated with a public tired of political brinkmanship and highlighted the real-world stakes. He called for leadership rooted in pragmatism and decency, not political gamesmanship. Buffett's intervention shifted the focus from partisan blame to the core function of government, protecting the vulnerable. His message was clear: essential benefits should never be used as leverage. In a divided moment, his voice was a moral compass, urging the nation to remember its duty to those most in need. As the Supreme Court's intervention lingers, the real solution lies with Congress, which could restore SNAP by passing a funding bill. If Congress acts, the crisis ends, but the deeper constitutional questions remain unresolved, leaving the door open for future shutdowns to threaten aid. If the stalemate continues, the Supreme Court must decide whether to keep the stay, delaying benefits, or force the administration to pay out. This episode has exposed how easily vital programs can be derailed by politics, sparking calls for reforms to protect essential aid from future shutdowns. States' emergency actions highlighted federal failures and the need for systemic change. Ultimately, this case is about more than 1 month's benefits. It's a test of American institutions and values. The outcome will shape the balance between executive power and judicial oversight, with real consequences for millions. In the end, the lesson is clear. Access to food should never be a political weapon.